Good morning, YouTube. Today's video with Charles Missler is on Esther chapters 5 through 7. I'm copying the link to that video now and dropping it into the live chat so you can have that if you'd like it. Okay. Today we'll be reading from Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra chapter 9 verse 1 through chapter 10 verse 44, and Nehemiah chapter 1 through chapter 2 verse 20. Good morning, Lord. Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning and ask that you would bless Sassy Q and her husband with safe travel as they travel through my state on to Wyoming to meet up with family where they've lost an aunt and uncle recently. They didn't pass away together on the same day, but they lost the aunt recently, and they waited to have a ceremony with the two together. Please bless them with safe travel, accident-free, and bless them with a good visit with their relatives. We lift up Kath to you this morning. I don't know of an update, but you know of one, Lord. If she needs to rest a few more days or several days, help her to get that rest before she wakes up. If it's your will, Lord, I ask you to heal her kidneys and her liver. Just bless her today, Lord, and comfort her and bring her peace. We pray for our friends and family in need, whether it's they're being sick or recovering from injury or fighting cancer or feeling blue or depressed or needing financial help, having other kind of problems. Everyone has a need, Lord. Please bless them all today and comfort them and guide them and direct them. And I hope and pray, Lord, that everyone would have a blessed day. Be with our president and his wife, President Trump and Melania and their staff, and all those that are traveling with them, that he would get back home safely. God protect him too, Lord, that nothing would happen to them. Keep them safe, Lord. I pray for our country who is grieving Charlie Kirk. Protect those that are speaking up and standing strong for you, Lord. Keep them safe. Bless them all today, Lord. And help us through this grief. And help us to somehow come together with our country to fight the good fight against evil. Thank you for this Bible group, Lord. Sometimes I forget to pray for them, but we always ask, Lord, that you would bring those that are lost to you, Lord, that you would save as many as you can. Open the eyes and hearts of those that need salvation to seek you, Jesus. Thank you for these Bible verses that we'll read today. Help us to understand them. And all these things we ask in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Wasn't going to talk much because I haven't had hardly any sleep. And there I go rambling again. Sorry about that. So we start with Ezra chapter 9. Now when these things were done, the princes came to me, saying, the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands, doing according to their admonitions, even of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the the Jebusites, and the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken their daughters for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy seed have mingled themselves with the people of those lands. Yea, the hand of the princes and rulers hath been chief in this trespass. And when I heard this thing, I rent my garment with my mantle, and plucked off the hair of my head and of my beard, and sat down astonished. Oh my. They were assembled unto me, every one that trembled at the words of the God of Israel, because of the transgression of those that had been carried away. And I sat astonished until the evening sacrifice. And at the evening sacrifice, I rose up from my heaviness, and having rent my garment and my mantle, I fell upon my knees and spread out my hands unto the Lord my God, and said, O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift up my face to thee, my God, for our iniquities are increased over our head, and our trespass is grown up into the heavens. Since the days of our fathers have we been in a great trespass unto this day, and for our iniquities have we, our kings and our priests, been delivered into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to captivity, and to a spoil, and to confusion of face, as it is this day. And now for a little space grace hath been shewed from the Lord our God, to leave us a remnant to escape, and to give us a nail in his holy place, that our God may lighten our eyes, and give us a little reviving in our bondage. For we were bondmen, yet our God hath not forsaken us in our bondage, but hath extended mercy unto us in the sight of the kings of Persia, to give us a reviving, to set up the house of our God, and to repair the desolations thereof, and to give us a wall in Judah and in Jerusalem. And now, O our God, what shall we say after this? For we have forsaken thy commandments, which thou hast commanded by thy servants the prophets, saying, the land unto which ye go to possess it, it is an unclean land, with the filthiness of the people of the lands, and with their abominations, which have filled it from one end to another with their uncleanliness. Now therefore give not your daughters unto their sons, neither take their daughters unto your sons, nor seek their peace or their wealth forever, that ye may be strong, and eat the good of the land, and leave it for an inheritance to your children forever. And after all that is come upon us for our evil deeds, and for our great trespass, seeing that thou our God hast punished us less than our iniquities deserve, and hast given us such deliverance as this, should we again break thy commandments and join in affinity with the people of these abominations? Wouldst not thou be angry with us till thou hast consumed us, so that there should be no remnant nor escaping? O Lord God of Israel, thou art righteous, for we remain yet escaped, as it is this day. Behold, we are before thee in our trespasses, for we cannot stand before thee because of this.
Chapter 10. O Lord God of Israel, thou art righteous, for we remain yet escaped, as it is this day. Behold, we are before thee in our trespasses.
Teresa?
I know I just accidentally read the last verse again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's all right.
Okay, before then, astonied means is an old word for astonished. I looked it up to make sure.
Oh, it's pronounced astonied.
Yeah, astonied. Well, whatever. They
Thank
probably
you.
pronounced it differently. But also, don't worry about rambling. Way back in the day, but in the colonies and before then, no preacher was worth his salt unless he could pray like everything. As you know, when they had the first prayer, when they were doing the Constitution, the minister prayed for 2 hours. As you can see, remember what Miss said, I think. Also, no preacher
Okay.
was worth salt if he could not preach a 4-hour sermon.
Oh, my.
Yes, that's how come they had those deacons wandering around with those sticks where they could poke you if you went to sleep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did they really do that?
yes, they did.
My goodness.
I learned that when I went to school at the Seventh Day Adventist School. We went all three from Adam all the way through the Catholic Reformation. You know. Anyway, let me go on and finish up this reading here.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, when Ezra had prayed, and when he had confessed, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God. There assembled unto him out of Israel a very great congregation of men and women and children, for the people wept very sore. And Shechaniah the son of Jehiel, one of the sons of Elam, answered and said unto Ezra, We have trespassed against our God, and have taken strange wives of the people of the land. Yet now there is hope in Israel concerning this thing. Now therefore, let us make a covenant with our God to put away all the wives and such as are born of them, according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those that tremble at the commandment of our God, and let it be done according to the law. Arise, for this matter belongeth unto thee. We also will be with thee. Be of good courage, and do it. Then arose Ezra, and made the chief priest, the Levites, and all Israel to swear that they should do according to this word. And they swear. Then Ezra rose up before the house of God and went into the chamber of Johanan, the son of Elishab. And when he came thither, he did eat no bread nor drink water, for he mourned because of the transgression of them that had been carried away. And they made proclamation throughout Judah and Jerusalem unto all the children of the captivity that they should gather themselves together in Jerusalem, and that whosoever would not come within 3 days, according to the counsel of the princes and elders, all his substance would be forfeited, and himself separated from the congregation of those that had been carried away. Then all the men of Judah and Benjamin gathered themselves together unto Jerusalem within 3 days. It was the 9th month, on the 20th day of the month, and all the people sat in the street of the house of God, trembling because of this matter, and because of the great rain. And Ezra the priest stood up and said unto them, Ye have transgressed, and have taken strange wives, which means they weren't Jewish. Well, they weren't of Israel, to increase the trespass of Israel. Now therefore, make confession unto the Lord God of your fathers, and do his pleasure, and separate yourselves from the people of the land and from the strange wives. Then all the congregation answered and said in a loud voice, As thou hast said, so must we do. But the people are many, and it is a time of much rain, and we are not able to stand without, neither is this a work of 1 day or 2, for we are many that have transgressed in this thing. Let our rulers of all congregations stand, and let all them which have given strange wives in our cities come at appointed times, and with them the elders of every city and the judges thereof, until the fierce wrath of our God for this matter be turned from us. Only Jonathan, the son of Asahel, and Jehaziah, the son of Tivah, were employed about this matter, and Meshullam and Shabbatai the Levite helped them, and the children of the captivity did so. And Ezra the priest, with certain chiefs of the fathers, after the house of their father, and all of them by their names, were separated, and sat down in the first day of the 10th month to examine the matter. And they made an end with all the men that had taken strange wives by the first day of the first month. And among the sons of the priests that were found that had taken strange wives, namely of the sons of Yeshua, the son of Je- Jezadak, and his brethren, Messiah and Eliezer and Yarab and Gedaliah. And they gave their hands that they would put away their wives, and being guilty, they offered a ram of the flock for their trespass. And the sons of Immer, Hanani, and Zebedai, and the sons of Haram, Matthiah, and Elijah, and Shemiah, and Jehiel, and Uzziah, and of the sons of Pashur, Eloni, Maaseiah, Ishmael, Nathaniel, Jozabad, and Elisha. Also of the Levites, Jozabad and Shimei, and Keliah, the same as Kelita, Pethaniah, Judah, and Eliezer. Of the singers, Eliashib, and of the porters, Shalom, and Tilam, and Uri. Moreover, of Israel, the sons of Parosh, Rimiah, Jeziah, Malchi, Mammon, Eleazar, Malchijah, and Benaiah. And the sons of Elam, Mattaniah, Zechariah, and Jahiel, Abdi, Jermoth, and Eliah. And of the sons of Tu, Elioniah, Eliashib, Mattaniah, and Jermoth, Zobad, and Aziza. And of the sons of Bebiah, Yehonanan, Hananiah, Zebiah, and Altiah. And of the sons of Benai, Meshullam, Mala, and Adiah, and Jazub, Sheil, and Ramoth. And the sons of Pahathmoab, Adniah, Chaleel, Benaiah, Mattaniah, Bezaleel, Benanua, and Manasseh. And of the sons of Haram, Eleazar, Ishmael, Malchiah, Shemaiah, and Shimeon, Benjamin, Melech, and Shemara. And of the sons of Hashem, Mattaniah, Mattatha, Zabad, Eliphelet, Jeremiah, Manasseh, and Shimei. And of the sons of Benai, Madiah, Amram, and Uel. Benaiah, Kelua, Benaiah, Merimoth, Eliashib, Mattaniah, and Jasar, and Benai, and Benui, and Shimei, and Shelemiah, Nathan, and Abadiah, Nadabai, Shashiah, and Shariah, Azareel, Shelemiah, Shemariah, Shalom, Amariah, and Joseph or Joseph. And the sons of Nebo, Jariel, Matanath, Zabad, Zabiniah, Jadua, and Joel, and Benaiah. All these had taken strange wives, and some of them had wives by whom they had children. Uh,
Thank you,
Nemia,
Teresa,
that's fine.
for being willing to just to read those names.
Yeah.
Jesus, God had to have known that we would struggle with these names.
Oh, yes. And that, now I do know somebody, Nemia Gordon. He's a Karaite Jew, and his name is spelled the way in the Bible, this way in the that I'm fixing to read. So, but everybody in Western world says it calls it Nehemiah. So Nehemiah 1 through 2, or Nehemiah, chapter 1. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, and it came to pass in the month Shesleu in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan the palace, that Hanani, one of my brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, and I asked them, according to the Jews that had escaped, what was which was left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass, when I heard these words, that I sat down and wept, and mourned certain days, and fasted, and prayed before the God of heaven, and said, I beseech thee, O Lord God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him and observe his commandments. Let thine ear now be attentive, and thine eyes open, that thou mayest hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now, day and night, for the children of Israel, thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. We have dwelt very corruptly against thee, and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments, which thou commandest thy servant Moses. Remember, I beseech thee, the word that thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, if ye transgress, I will scatter you abroad among the nations. But if ye turn unto me, and keep my commandments, and do them, though there were of you cast out unto the uttermost part of the heaven, will I gather them from thence, and bring them unto the place that I have chosen to set my name there. Now these are thy servants and thy people, whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power and by thy hand. O Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant, and to the prayer of thy servants who desire to fear thy name and prosper. I pray thee, thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. And just a minute, I got to get a drink here. There we go. And it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him. And I took up the wine, and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. Wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad, seeing that thou art not sick? There is nothing else but the sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid. And I said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad? When the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, layeth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire. Then the king said unto me, for what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. And I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, and thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. And the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be, and when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judah. And a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertain to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me according to the good hand of my God upon me. Then I came to the governors beyond the river, and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, heard of it, it grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel. So I came to Jerusalem, and was there 3 days. And I rose up in the night, I and a few men with me, neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was there any beast with me, save the beast that I rode upon. And I went out by night by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon well, and to the dung port, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates thereof were consumed with fire. And I went on to the gate of the fountain, and to the king's pool, but there was no place for the beast that was under me to pass. Then I went up in the night by the brook, and viewed the wall, and turned back, and entered the gate of the valley, and so returned. And the rulers knew not whither I went, or what I did, neither had I as yet told it to the Jews, nor to the priests, nor to the nobles, nor to the rulers, nor to the rest that did the work. And I said unto them, ye see the distress that we are in, how doth Jerusalem layeth in waste, and the kings thereof are burned with fire. Come, and let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach. And I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, as also the king's word that he had spoken unto me. And they said, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite, and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian heard it, they laughed at us to scorn, and despised us, and said, what is this thing ye do? Will ye rebel against the king? Then answered I them, and said unto them, the God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore we his servants will arise and build. But ye have no portion, no right, nor memorial in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm very grateful for you and your willingness to read and to share your knowledge. It's a wonderful blessing.
I'm Actually, I'm glad I can remember all that. Yeah.
Well, today's video, Chuck Missler says, is very dramatic. So we continue the series of Esther, and this video covers chapters 5 through 7. And this video is only 44 minutes and 30 seconds long. Thank you for being with us here today, and let's get started.
Well, we are in the book of Esther, and we are going to tackle 3 chapters tonight, because I was convinced that if you're going to read one, you can't stop. You're going to read all 3 anyway. So we'll swing through this probably the most dramatic climax that you'll find in any literature. It's pretty exciting. Esther is, of course, an obscure book spiritually to many people, but as we go through, stop and try to make a list of the spiritual lessons. That's very, very rich and instructive. Why isn't the Bible? For that very reason. Well, the name of God doesn't appear. Wrong. It appears all through it, but we'll save that for a special session after time for the session after next. But the word Esther itself means something hidden. And so there's a story behind the story, and that story will be ourselves. And we'll also discover hidden codes behind the text in subsequent sessions. The time of this, of course, is the peak of the Persian Empire. And the issue, of course, is a Hitler-like attempt to exterminate all the Jews in the known world. That's the issue that's confronting us here. And there are 4 major characters. There's Xerxes the king, an actual guy of history. He was live and real, and he's well known in the literature, and very, very impulsive character. Esther, the replacement queen, that of course is the centerpiece of the story here, and her guardian, Mordecai. And Mordecai's story really starts 600 years earlier, when Shimei, who was cursing David, was not. He didn't allow his men to kill him, but he spared him through grace. And because he did, Mordecai surfaces here. And in a similar sense, some 500-600 years earlier, Saul failed to kill the Agagites, and from that mistake, of course, Samuel corrected that pretty well, but he still missed one, and that's from whom we get Haman, the villain of the piece. And when this is read at Purim each year, whenever Haman's name is mentioned in the story, everybody stamps their feet and makes noise, and I don't want you to disrupt our recording by emulating that traditional practice. But this whole thing is going to be a proclamation of human vanity, and the vanity of human greatness and the greatness of human vanity, both ways. And these chapters that we're going to look at will mark the climax of the book. There's much to come after chapter 7, but these 5, 6, and 7 are very much the zenith of the book in many ways. Tables are turned, and evil is dramatically twisted. In modern terms, it would be as if 5, 6, and 7 were written by Alfred Hitchcock, because there's just so many twists and things. It's kind of fun. And of course, God's people are preserved through the most unlikely set of circumstances. And Daniel emphasizes that in his book. He says, the Most High God ruleth in the kingdom of men. And we're going to see that very visibly happening here as God manipulates the subtlest of circumstances to accomplish his objective. Coincidence is when God is working undercover, okay? Or as the rabbis might say, coincidence is not a kosher word, okay? But picking up a few verses from last time, you remember Mordecai was in sackcloth and ashes because he understood that the commandment had been given by the king to Haman to wipe out all the Jews. And so he commanded an answer to Esther. He asked her to go to the king, and he pointed out that's risking her life to do that because she hasn't been summoned. That would be subject to death. And then he answers her and says, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape the king's house more than all the Jews, and what she's going to be killed too. And so Esther's response hadn't been encouraging. Haman's edict would even reach to the throne, is his point. Mordecai continues, and he's doing this through a messenger because he's not allowed to go into the harem and so forth. But anyway, and if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. In other words, Mordecai is confident that God will save the Jews anyway, somehow. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? And this is the place where that phrase comes from, that echoes throughout history. That you and I are probably here for such a time as this that we're in, which is unique in itself. It's a key lesson for all of us. But continuing then from the last few verses, then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. This is her response. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise. And so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. If she approaches the king uninvited, it's subject to death. That was the law. And so she says, if I perish, I perish. So we're now in chapter 5. Let's jump in. This is Esther's approach to the king. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over and against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over and against the gate of the house. So he's in his chambers there, huh? And notice she abandons her garb of woe and dons apparel appropriate to the occasion. There was a very elaborate movie done recently called One Night with the King, which is a remarkable production of the story of Esther. And there's many things about it that are really done quite well. There's a couple little twists that are Hollywood kinds of things. They have a Haman little emblem that looks an awful lot like a swastika, cleverly done. And there's a couple other little gimmicks they use to make it, to carry the story. They rewrite a few things, but she comes in out of the rain. They don't really understand, the script writer, there were some things they could have improved, but it could have been more scriptural. But in any case, no, she gets ready with the proper apparel to approach the king. And that's important in understanding her approach here. And there's a propriety in dress, as in other things. Inattention to bodily attire is no sign of virtue or religion. It can be the mark of idle or slovenly spirit. It can be a want of self-respect. It can be a vanity in itself, or a desire to show disrespect to others. Those are all aspects of not dressing appropriately. Now, the destiny of Israel seemed to rest on this one act of hers. She's going to make an appearance upon which the destiny of Israel is going to hang. So she positioned herself accordingly. And it's noted by many writers that there are short journeys, even from room to room, that can be more trying than the traversing of a desert. This has got to be a tough spot for her. In a few moments here, she'll know whether she wins or loses. And it was so when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. What a relief. And the king held out. See, we understand from all that we know about Xerxes, from Herodotus and others, he was very impulsive, very erratic, hard to predict. And so she was at great risk here. But anyway, she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So she drew near and touched the top of the scepter, which exonerated her, so she's not put to death. She's got a hearing. Big deal, obviously. And the first braving of a perilous duty often scatters the fears of anticipation. So this is the pivot point. The threat of death now is evaporated, for her at least. Her breach of etiquette was forgiven. Even though she had not been with a king for over a month, he was pleased that she came. You can understand why she was apprehensive, of course. But he held out the golden scepter to comply with the law so that she wouldn't be killed. And then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? What is thy request? It shall be given thee to half of the kingdom. That's an expression not to be taken literally, but it means that whatever you want, you'll get. It's like offering her a blank check. Not literally, but in spirit. And he obviously is surprised because he realizes she risked her life walking in that way. He relieved that by extending the scepter, but he's obviously curious what on earth is on her mind that would cause her to risk her life to make the request, right? So he said that he and the half of the kingdom is just, it was a figure of speech in those days. And Esther answered, if it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day into a banquet that I have prepared for him. Well, wow, that's easily accomplished. They're ready for a party, right? But guess who's coming to dinner? Haman's going to be there too. That says something about Haman's status. He was the vizier, the prime minister, if you will. And normally the king and queen would dine separately, each in their own apartment. But not only to invite the king, but another male guest was an unusual request. Then the king said, cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. That's all she wanted, have a banquet. Okay. Now he obviously knows there's something coming, but okay, that's great. It's an unusual honor to be invited to a banquet with the queen in the first place, because Persian officials were very protective of their wives. But notice he refers to her as Esther, not Queen Esther, here. So he's in a good mood. He's relaxed. That's sort of an informal remark. He's in a relaxed mood. And so he's ready after the feasting to give her whatever she asked. The king said to Esther at the banquet of wine, they have this banquet, well, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. What is thy request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be performed. So what's she going to ask for? The expectation is up, right? So he understood that it was not just for mere entertainment that she had ventured her very life. So his curiosity is getting sharpened here, right? What does she ask for? Another banquet. Yeah. Then answered Esther, said, my petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. In other words, I'll answer your question tomorrow. So she doesn't spring the question yet. She invites them to another party tomorrow night. And this turns out to be a delaying interval. We have no idea why she chose to postpone the request for another day, to have a second banquet. She may have had her reasons, but it becomes clear God had his. Okay, she maybe unknowingly was just setting the stage more than she had any idea. Why a second banquet? There are all kinds of conjectures among the commentators. Maybe she lost her nerve. She wanted to pick up, she wasn't ready to spring it yet. She's going to bring it up the next day. Maybe the king's mood was not perfect. He seemed relaxed enough, but she sensed the timing wasn't perfect. Whatever her instincts were, it will turn out, not from her knowledge, that the 24-hour interval will prove to be essential for God's purposes, because God's going to accomplish something overnight that would be absolutely impossible to predict. Prudence works patiently. Haman was being set up, and he's being set up by the real ruler of the universe. Now, see, there's some possibilities. So the first occasion, the king may have been unprepared. The other thought is maybe the throne room was too public. The scene might backfire. And the other thing, she may have wanted only Haman present with the king. That may be what she's trying to control here. Those are all possibilities. But the timing was certainly imperfect, because a sleepless night will create an opportunity that had its seeds planted 5 years earlier. So we'll see what happened. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful and with a glad heart, because he's been invited not just once but twice to dine with the king. He's feeling pretty good about it. But when Haman saw that Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. That's an echo back there in the earlier chapters. Remember, Haman, it really rubbed him the wrong way that this one guy wouldn't bow to him. And he's been promoted since. And Mordecai refuses to bend the knee to Haman. And that really, you'd think that Haman, as rich as he is and with all the that he enjoys, that he wouldn't let that bother him. But it's just the other way around. Then that gets, pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. And so the Greeks have a proverb, whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. Well, Haman's getting angry here. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children. He has 10 sons, by the way. And all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he advanced him above the princes. And so he's on a boastful trip here, an ego trip. Man, okay. The multitude, he has 10 sons. They're going to become important in a subsequent chapter. But he was so overwrought about Mordecai that he could not enjoy his good position. His obsession poisoned the joy of his position and opportunity. How often that is. That one thing that we didn't get drives us up a tree. And the 9 other things that went well, we sort of forget. It's that one thing we didn't get that rubs us the wrong way. So on this occasion, to relieve himself of rage and anxiety at Mordecai, he gathered his family and spent time boasting about the wealth he had amassed and the family he raised and all of that. I love this line that I picked up from Lander. When little men cast long shadows, it's a sign that the sun is setting. I love that. I think that is just great. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself. And tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. So Haman is really enjoying that. That's a big deal. He's in a braggadocio mode here. Okay. Of course, Matthew 6:34 says, take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. That's a warning that Haman was denied. God sends blindness to those who he means to destroy. Haman had no perception. He had no concept of the things that were working against him. God had given Mordecai the heroism of faith. God had strengthened timid Esther. And God had Haman erect the necessary gallows. God needed a gallows. So he had Haman erect it for him. Haman didn't realize that. Anyway, yet all this availeth me nothing so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. See, he admits that his wealth and position meant nothing to him. His obsession with Mordecai poisoned his peace and exuberance. On Wall Street, they have a expression, bulls get some, bears get some, hogs get slaughtered. And so, okay, with little foxes spoil the vines, is what Solomon says. So the forces of evil are underlying the facts. Immoderate ambition, intense worship of self, rankling unforgiveness, a greed that had grown with the getting. We need to study Haman, because we all may be guilty of those same things. Hopefully not to that degree. An appetite that increased with feeding. That's what Solomon says. Dead flies cause the ointment of apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honor. There is a Selah moment here. Don't you and I share in a larger, bolder, blacker portrait of Haman? Aren't we also prone to share the perverse nature of Haman? If we're honest with ourselves, we may see some of Haman in each of us. Is there a larger application lurking behind this tale than simply the one of history here? No amount of education, culture, or religiousness will eradicate evil. It is in the nature of man, period. Only a new birth. Only a new birth. Let's not lose sight of that as we hiss our Hamans, as we enjoy the retribution that's about to unfold here. Let's recognize that we may be participants in that. Verse 14, then said Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made in his own front yard, 75 feet high. 50 cubits, that's 75 feet high. So he's ready to build it and get permission from the king to put Mordecai on, and that'll solve his problem. Well, we'll see. It's not a gallows, by the way. The English translation speaks of this as if he was hung. The word gallows is etz in the Hebrew. It means tree, wood, timber stalks, a staff. It's more likely a staff for impaling, not a hanging gallows. It's a preamble to crucifixion, which was invented by the Persians and widely adopted, of course, by the subsequent Romans. So they invented crucifixion, passed it on to the Greeks, and later it was widely adopted for the Romans for extreme crimes for non-citizens. And but the gallows had to be made because God's going to need it here in a little bit. So he has it made. So now we're in chapter 6. You ready for this? This is one of the fun ones. This is one of those funs that as a movie director, you just would love to direct the scene that's coming here. The entire course of history for the Jewish nation was changed because a pagan king, hundreds of miles from the center of God's activities in Jerusalem, couldn't sleep. Well, we know from Romans 28:28. For all things work together for good to them that love God. Them are called according to his purpose. Well, there's some interesting things going on here. So that night, this is the night after the first banquet, before the second. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. When the king couldn't sleep, he had them read his history books. That put him to sleep. Book of Chronicles. The historiographers were attached to the Persian court, and they attended the monarch wherever he went. That's recorded in Ezra chapter 6. And we find them jotting down facts for Xerxes in a number of places by Herodotus, at Damascus, and also Salamis. And it was found written that Mordecai told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on King Ahasuerus. This was 5 years ago when this plot against the king was unveiled by Mordecai. Of all the texts that the reader might have selected to read, he happened, that's in quotes, on these particular records. He had 12 years of history here. He picked a segment from 5 years ago that contained the account of Mordecai's uncovering the assassination plot. Okay? And what a coincidence. Okay? By the way, as just an incidental point, Xerxes actually lost his life through a conspiracy formed by Artabanus, the captain of the guard, and Aspetrus, the eunuch and chamberlain, later on. But that's the way he finally dies, by just that such an event. But in any case, the king said, hearing this read, he says, "What honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this?" And then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, "There's nothing done for him." It was an oversight. Somehow they never rewarded Mordecai for saving the king's life back then. Remember, we had that earlier? Okay. See, gratitude is a duty as well as a virtue. 5 years had passed without any recognition. Now, this was not only an oversight, it was a breach of Persian law, it turns out. Royal beneficiaries formed a distinct class and had their names inscribed on a special list, Herodotus records, tells us. So this is not only an oversight, morally, but it's also a violation of the law that had never been repaired. See? So we always wonder, why did Esther ask for a delay before telling the king her request? She postponed to a second banquet. We don't know why. But the reason is now made clear to you and me as observers. God is going to elevate Mordecai through this. He's going to prepare the king to react unfavorably to Haman. And so when Xerxes asked what honor Mordecai had been given for saving the king's life, he found that he had not been rewarded. That's a huge blunder, a bureaucratic blunder. Now, there's another suggestion that possible here. Was this due to Mordecai's Jewishness? I don't think so. But you can't help but recall the Dreyfus trial that caused Herzl to launch the whole Zionist thing, the trial in France. But see, if Mordecai had been rewarded like he should have been back then, it wouldn't have served God's purpose. See, the oversight is in effect God ordained because God's timing is perfect. It really does Mordecai and everybody else enormous good for this to come up right now, as you'll see in a minute. And so the next chapter is going to be a phenomenal chapter. Anyway, the king said, well, who is in the court? Now Haman had come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. Haman's got the gallows ready. He's going to the king to spring this request, right? The king's got this thing on his mind, obviously. Now Haman was came early in the morning to effect Mordecai's destruction. And the king's servant said unto him, "Behold, Haman standeth in the court." The king says, "Let him come in." So Haman came in. And the king said unto him, "What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor?" He's asking Haman that. And Haman, of course, now Haman thought in his own heart, to whom would the king delight to honor more than myself, right? This is one of those scenes that just I just think it's fabulous. Here's Haman, convinced, okay. He who loves himself will have no rivals, right? And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. He's assuming he's the guy, right? So he's outlining this honor to be bestowed. You can also jump to the conclusion, it's probably legitimate, that he eventually thought he was going to find a way to be king. When the time came, he would have plotted. So he's setting, getting the crowd used to, who he is, see? To wear apparel worn by the king is normally against the law, but the king could allow it, is the point. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal, whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Now, can you just see Haman visualizing that coming? Man, this is going to be great, huh? This is really cool. And so he obviously lays this all out, that he should have the appearance of royalty, kingly robes, royal steed. He should be served by one of the most noble princes who'd pull this all off. Take him through the whole house, town on the horse, and so forth. He didn't need money. Haman didn't. He was pretty wealthy. He craved respect from his peers and so forth. And he had more power than anyone outside the royal family, but he wanted even more respect from the people. He's really hungry for that. And his lust for respect from Mordecai is what's got him in trouble in the first place. And I love this sentence. Verse 10 is the key one. Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horses thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. I would have loved to have a picture of Haman's face at that point. Oh my goodness. Whoops. Make haste. See, the delay had already been too long. It's been 5 years since he was supposed to have been honored. So the king's in a hurry here. Mordecai the Jew. We suspect that he says it that way because that was probably the way it was recorded in the histories, see? Apparently the very phrase of the records. So what choice did Haman have? Can you picture this? Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. I somehow don't think Haman had his heart in the job. Couldn't happen to a more deserving couple of guys. Mordecai the Jew, the 5 times that he's called the Jew, apparently to highlight the fact that he was Jewish, though opposed by Haman. And yet he was still given a prominent position in the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire's history, by the way, has many Jewish people in very key positions. That's another whole interesting study, by the way. But what irony for Haman. Mordecai, whom he hated, had to be honored by Haman at the very time that he had planned to supervise Mordecai's impalement. He wanted more respect from Mordecai, and he now had to give respect to Mordecai. Oh, I love this. This is great. Haman himself had to carry out the king's order, even though it embarrassed and angered him greatly. Boy, can you imagine him fuming. That's cool. And he's just getting warmed up here. There's more coming. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hastened to his house, mourning and having his head covered. See, the irony continues. It's not over yet. Earlier, Mordecai had publicly grieved over his people. Now Haman privately grieves over his own humiliation. When Haman had left his wife in the morning, he'd been elated. Now the bottom had fallen out from under him. Having his head covered. Before the day is out, his head is going to be covered in a way that he doesn't anticipate. This whole thing is just beginning. Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh, his wife, unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. What you're hearing here is the predisposition of the Persians to superstition. They believed in fate and omens. And his wife and his wise men are saying, see, this is an omen. You're on a losing streak here, buddy. So their superstitious outlook proves to be prophetic in this case. The word wise men here raises something else you should be aware of. There was a caste of priests, hereditary priests, called magi. And that's from where we get the term magistrates. They were priests, hereditary priests, that also were the kingmakers. They were the ones that really enforced the law, in effect. And there was and Daniel, centuries before, Daniel was put in charge of them that really offended the hereditary priesthood, that Darius put him in charge. That's why they set up the lion's den incident. But the point is, he set up a cabal of magi to watch for a set of circumstances that would lead to the Star of Bethlehem and all of that. And we have all that's all in the records, and you can check that out. We summarize it in the Christmas story, what really happened. Most people have no idea who the Magi really were. But we'll move on here. And while they were yet talking with him, he's there commiserating with his wife and advisors. While they were talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman in unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. He's late for supper. When the day started, he was excited because he was going to be invited to the second banquet. Man, was he privileged. I don't think he's quite as excited about it right now. I think he's pretty nervous about what on earth is going to transpire now. And the chamberlains, they came and they hasted to bring him. And so the world crashing on his head, he's hustled off to the second banquet. And I imagine he really dreaded it. Haman stands as a prototype of all anti-God activists who would oppose God's people. These historical figures emerge as symbols of much larger proportions. Israel's history is replete with examples when men tried to set aside God's promises to their nation and had failed. Setting aside God's promises to Israel. I don't worry about Israel because of Psalm 121:4, among others. Because God's going to do the same thing in the future. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. You know, in the Persian religions, lots made of omens and signs. That's where we get the term kismet and all of that. Fate, chance, luck were considered very important in everyday life. The book of Esther stands as a polemic against a fatalistic view of the world. Clearly, God is maneuvering and using the subtlest little elements to weave his tapestry here. So now we're in chapter 7. You ready for this one? This is the second banquet. This is prime time stuff. This is great. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. By now the king is really curious. What on earth does his queen want to go through all this? In Persian feasts, the dishes were a few. Time was passed in drinking and eating dessert most of the time. It sounds like my kind of people. And if he knew the connection between Mordecai and Esther, he might have been even more terrified by the prospect of attending the second banquet given by Esther. That's Haman, that is. His curiosity whetted, the king for the third time asked Esther her request, and again he promised that he would grant it to her. Now Esther knows timing when she sees it, and she's got it right to the point, so she's going to make her request, life for her and her people. Verse 3, Then Esther the queen answered and said, notice how she puts this, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition and my people at my request. Now that's got to stun the king. What on earth is she talking about? Let my life be given me? For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen or bondwomen, I'd held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Not being sold into slavery, that she would have kept quiet. No, she's being sold to be killed. That's her point. She and her people. To be destroyed, to be slain, to be perished. See, it's now clear to Xerxes what her nationality was. She explained that all her people had been sold. Remember, the king had been offered a bribe by Haman back in chapter 3 and 4. Offered a bribe by Haman into extinction. Now, she shows her subservient position to the king. She added that if she had merely been sold into slavery, she would not have bothered the king. And not only knows how unbelievable the power of the king was, but also the condition to which she was reduced. Esther may have been apprehensive, not knowing if the king would grant her request. It was quite possible he would fly into a rage the way he had done with Vashti in chapter 1. So she knew she's at risk here, despite, we have the benefit of knowing how it ended, but living it is quite another issue here. That's very powerful pleading. She heroically united herself with her people to her own detriment. Moses did the same thing, as Hebrews 11 points out. So did Joshua in chapter 24. And Christ himself, praise God. And the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? I assume Haman had his undivided attention. Who is he? See, he at once he makes her enemy his enemy. That's got to take the... undoubtedly, Haman was in terror because he realized he's about to be exposed before the most powerful man on the face of the earth. Haman's having a bad day. He must have known that his execution was assured and that fate was working against him. Esther said, the adversary and the enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. I can imagine. The king is so shook by this, his rage is starting to boil. He has to regain self-control. So the king, rising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. He went up to gather his thoughts. He's trying to, his rage is boiling over. Now, and Haman stood up to make a request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Haman figured that out pretty quickly. The king leaves the scene for while he catches his breath and so forth. In his wrath, he went into the palace garden. Now the king is filled with rage. He had a tendency that way. We see that in several occasions in the text and several occasions in history where he totally loses his cool during a battle or because of a defeat and so on. So he apparently went in to try to regain his control over his anger. When he comes back in, when the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereupon Esther was. Haman realized that his only hope was to get some mercy expressed by the queen. So he falls at her feet. They're all sitting on, they lie on divans while they eat. He falls at her feet to beg for mercy. But just as the king is returning in, then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? He's taking whether he really believed it or just used an excuse, he's accusing him of attacking the queen. Now, they're not alone there. They've got attendants that are around taking care of things. So as the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. They isn't Xerxes and Esther. They is the attendants. They realize he's a doomed man, and what you do with a doomed man is cover his head. So he's going to have his face covered for a second time today. And so that's the attendants. They seize the culprit and execute him. And see, the covering of a condemned man was also practiced among the Romans and the Macedonians. That was typical. When someone was condemned to death, they put a hood over his head. Notice the sudden contrast. Esther's darkest hour turns to light. Haman's day, ablaze with light and confidence in the morning, is now clouded with a fatal storm. Mordecai is plucked from an ostensible sentence of death and honored throughout the kingdom, and the contrasts are as blessed as they are sudden. What a turnaround. All in one day. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king. He's sort of editorializing here a little bit. Mordecai, the guy that spoke good for you, standeth in the house of Haman. It's in his front yard, right? Then the king said, hang him thereon. So he's not only doomed, he's going to be doomed on the very gallows that he had built for Mordecai that morning. He's probably hated by a lot of people in Susa, by the way. That's not hard to visualize, especially the government circles. So there are probably many glad to see Haman done with. the conniver, the manipulator. He slinks from plot to plot. Hang him thereon. It adds a certain touch of barbarity, I guess, that he would be hung on the very impalement procedures that he had set up for Mordecai. I think that's pretty cool. So they hang Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai, and then was the king's wrath pacified. Reaping what's sown. Didn't Paul say something about that in Galatians, right? Jacob killed an animal and lied to his father. Remember that? Pretending to be Esau. A few years later, Jacob's son killed an animal and lied to him, pretending that Joseph was dead. He got deceived by a similar ruse by his own sons. Pharaoh gave orders to drown the Jewish baby boys. Remember that in Exodus 1? One day his entire army was drowned in the Red Sea. David secretly took his neighbor's wife and committed adultery. David's own son Absalom took his father's concubines and openly committed adultery with him in 2 Samuel 16. And his daughter Tamar was raped by her half-brother Amnon. David killed Bathsheba's husband, you may recall. 3 of David's own sons were slain: Absalom, Amnon, and Adonijah. Saul of Tarsus encouraged the stoning of Stephen. Remember that? Well, Saul of Tarsus becomes Paul, the missionary, and he was stoned at Lystra and left for dead. Haman was degraded just when he thought he had reached the goal of his ambition. Haman perished on the very stake that he had erected for his enemy. Haman was characterized by boundless pride, boundless ambition, boundless cruelty. The mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceeding small. Though with patience he stands waiting, with exactness grinds he all. That says it, doesn't it? Pharaoh perished in the Red Sea. The dogs licked the blood of Ahab in Samaria. Herod was eaten of worms upon his throne. And we have Psalm 7 that summarizes the same thing. Psalm 7, starting verse 14. Behold, he travaileth with iniquity, and hath conceived mischief, and brought forth falsehood. He made a pit and digged it, and has fallen into the ditch which he had made. His mischief shall return upon his own head. His violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. I will praise the Lord according to his righteousness, and I will sing praise to the name of the Lord Most High. Retribution. Retribution. There's a worse enemy than Haman that is plotted against the children of men. A worse fate than massacre awaits those who fall into the snare of the foe. God warns us, you and me, to flee from the wrath to come. Little did Esther dream of the opportunity that would be open to her, but the hour came for her, and she succeeded. If I perish, I perish. But she was there for such a time as this. What are we to do about that? We need to use the present. And when the hour comes, hour of opportunity comes, and it will for each of us, we too need to be ready to speak, to strike, to suffer, to save. We're going to have the most exciting time for the kingdom of our lifetime in the years ahead. It's all happening. It's all positioning. When you approach the royal throne, you do it with reverence, proper attire, clothed with humility. By grace, not the law, with confidence and knowledge of what pleases him. We don't need several ifs in our approach to the king like Esther did. We simply come as a supplicant, a sinner, by way of an appropriate mediator, namely the Lord Jesus Christ himself. We got it wired. There is a remaining challenge before us in the book of Esther here. The table's not been turned, but the Jews were still left with a major problem. The king's edict to eradicate them was still in effect. A Persian decree even bound the king that had decreed it. They got a problem to solve. That's what's going to come up in the next couple of chapters. The Persian decree would still be a great slaughter of many innocent people because of the wicked actions of a now dead man. That didn't change anything. It was now the 3rd month, and there were 9 months to go before the fateful day, which was determined by of lots. That's why they call it Purim when we get there. When the Jews could legally be slain. So we need to see how that's going to be dealt with. So in the next session, I want you to read the last 3 chapters of the book. When we go through the last 3 chapters, I assume we get through all 3 next time. We may or may not. There's still some more stuff to cover because some of the most interesting surprises in the book I'm reserving for the last couple of sessions. So we'll go through, read the rest of the chapters, and we'll deal with the narrative next time. but just let you know in advance that there are things tucked underneath the text that will surprise you. And I'm not talking about equidistant letter sequences. There's some of those too. I'm talking about acrostics and others that are well defined in the Talmud and elsewhere. That we're not in the fringe area here. This is centerline stuff, and it will startle you to discover the designs that are operating underneath the text. We'll be doing that in subsequent sessions. So let's stand for a closing word of prayer.
All I can say is wow. Before I close today's YouTube video, I just want to say, wow, that even if in this today, deeply full of hate and evil, even if they don't get what's coming to them, what they deserve today or tomorrow or this year, we know without a doubt that when the day is that they die, and they will die because we all die, they will face the judgment of God. And there are those that are so evil and so hateful and so disgusting that they don't, it just doesn't seem that they're redeemable, that they would ever know the love of God. Miracles do happen, but people like Jimmy Kimmel, for example, who is so disgusting and hateful, I don't think there's any hope for him. There's so many, like George Soros, so evil, Bill Gates, whose father was a leader in Planned Parenthood. Just so many people. I could name a long list. They will face God's judgment. They will get what they deserve in the end, whatever God decides. And so more and more and more, I'm not worried about our enemies. I've been praying for God to take care of our enemies, to take our enemies and bring us justice. And He's been doing that every day. And we're seeing the dark being brought to light, which means all the hateful and evil people full of evil out there, a lot of them, their horrible ways and what they've done wrong is being brought to light to the world. It's amazing. So God wins. And that was my cat saying, I agree. No, you heard Wally beyond just then or not. So anyway, please continue to pray for our friend Kath, who is in the hospital recovering from surgery, who's had a cardiac arrest and is very sick. And appreciate that. And pray for all the students and everyone from children to older adults who witnessed in person the assassination of Charlie Kirk. There's a lot of trauma there. It's a horrible trauma. My sister just called me a few minutes ago in tears, asking if we were feeling the grief that the rest of us are feeling about Charlie Kirk. She said her husband was in tears, that he would listen to Turning Point every day or all the time. And I realized that the Turning Point airs at the same time as this video goes live. And so I don't blame anyone that would prefer to listen to that over us. That's okay. This is a recording. And so I encourage you to listen to what the speakers are saying. Today, I believe, was Glenn Beck. So I hope you are all blessed today, that God watches over you and answers your prayers. And I know He will. And I look forward to being here tomorrow with you. We love you. And now I'm